Welcome to Footprints and Impacts, the podcast where we uncover how the environment shapes our health and well-being. Whether you're curious about how chemicals in your surroundings affect you, or you're looking for practical ways to live a healthier life, you're in the right place. Brought to you by the Environmental Health Association of Canada and the Environmental Health Association of Quebec, this podcast shines a light on multiple chemical sensitivity, MCS, the importance of healthy, least toxic product choices, and what it means for those navigating this disability, where over 1 million Canadians have a diagnosis of MCS. We're here to raise awareness, offer resources for accessibility, prevention, and build a healthier, inclusive community. Let's dive in and explore how our footprints leave a lasting impact on our health and our planet. So hi everyone, and welcome back to Footprints and Impacts. I'm your host Marco, and today we have a truly powerful conversation ahead of us. We're diving into the deeply personal and important topic of multiple chemical sensitivity, MCS, a condition that affects millions of Canadians and countless people around the world. Joining us today is Renu Bakshi, a former TV journalist, a crisis communication expert, and also an advocate for those with MCS. Renu's work has taken her across the globe, helping organizations and leaders navigate the complexities of media and public opinion, but her journey hasn't been without its struggles. As someone living with MCS, Renu has experienced firsthand the challenges that come with this often invisible disability, from misunderstanding and stigma to a lack of support from institutions that should be protecting people like her. Today we'll explore her personal experience with MCS, the challenges she faced, and advocacy work she's doing to raise awareness and fight for better understanding of this condition. Renu, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Marco.
It's always a pleasure. So, Renu, you've had quite an extraordinary career, but today we're diving into a deeply personal aspect of your life. Could you start by telling us about your experience with multiple chemical sensitivity and what that journey has been like for you?
When I was younger, nobody would have know what my condition was. I would go to school, elementary school. We would play hockey at gym time, and we would have those plastic hockey sticks. And I couldn't hold them because my hands would swell up and get very itchy. I used to think it was maybe because there was germs on the stick. So, I would wash the stick, I would wash my hands, but it wouldn't alleviate those symptoms. And so I had to sit out hockey class. And as time went on, I started to recognize that there were certain products that I was using that were making me sick. I would wake up fine, but then I would get ready for school. And I was going to high school in the 80s when big hair was in style. And so I would, tease my hair and I would hairspray it like crazy. And I would end up with a headache and just feeling unwell for the rest of the day. And I managed to put two and two together that my hairspray was actually making me sick. As time progressed, it occurred to me that it wasn't just hairspray, it was anything with fragrance and harsh chemicals that was giving me these symptoms of feeling impaired, headaches, nausea, shortness of breath, coughing, and just feeling crappy. And so that's when I understood that chemicals were making me sick, but I didn't have a name for it back then.
Yeah. And like as you mentioned, like MCS is often misunderstood, even ridiculed. Could you share some of the most challenging experiences you faced in terms of the lack of awareness and support for people with MCS?
What's shocking to me is that in my experience, it's the very agencies that are meant to protect us that were the ones that were the most difficult to manage and deal with my condition. They actually pushed back, opposed, or created further challenges for me. When I started working at CTV, I mean, you can imagine, there's a lot of hairspray, makeup, and people would wear perfume, and I didn't understand why, because it's television, not smell-o-vision. And eventually I went to the human resources director and I explained my condition, again, not having a name for it 20 years ago. I didn't know there was a name for it. And I explained my condition, and she left it to me to speak with my colleagues individually to ask them to refrain from wearing such products around me, or at least spraying hairspray in my vicinity. And what that ended up doing was it ended up making me a target of bullying, and people stopped wanting to work with me. So an HR director should have known better than to tell somebody to have these conversations. It was her responsibility to manage what is disability in this country. But she actually made me a target. And so that was very upsetting. A few years ago, I had a leak in my unit from above. A washing machine overflowed. And I carry extra insurance because, as people with multiple chemical sensitivity know, we can't buy conventional furniture. We can't paint with conventional paint. We can't we can't bring conventional drywall into our homes after we've suffered a loss. So I carry extra insurance. And when I called my insurance provider and explained to them that I have MCS, first they claimed they'd never heard of such a condition. And then they fired me as a client. They fired me because they said they were not willing to accommodate my condition, even though I had paid extra to carry this insurance. And so when I said that it's a recognized disability in Canada and they have a duty to accommodate, they turned around and fired me. And that again is people who are in housing who should have known and should have accommodated me and didn't.
Yeah.
I feel lucky though, because I'm a strong person and I have resources at my disposal. And so with CTV, I made decisions to leave. My condition was part of the decision. It wasn't all of the decision, but it was part of my decision to leave a career at the pinnacle of my career. Uh, in terms of housing, I left my previous condo because I was constantly inundated with dryer smells coming from other units into my unit. And I was lucky that I found a home where dryer vents out the back, not the front. And so it doesn't come into anybody's units. So I'm lucky, and I really feel for the people who aren't as lucky or as I am, or don't have a platform like I do to stand up for myself.
Yeah. And I mean, you've spoken about MCS as a disability, an invisible disability, and how difficult it is for others to grasp the severity of it unless they experience it firsthand. What do you think the biggest misconception is about MCS that you wish people understood better?
The biggest problem with communicating MCS to people is the name, first of all. The name actually is a barrier to people's understanding of this condition. The word sensitivity and multiple chemical sensitivity implies it's something subjective. Oh, they're just sensitive people. They're being too sensitive. And sensitive has a negative connotation in our society, especially when it comes to women, which is unfortunate. There's a bias. The name
Mm.
doesn't help. Uh, Secondly, because it's an invisible disability, it's very difficult to make it visible for people, even though our symptoms can create visible signs like, somebody feeling impaired or having a headache or being dizzy. But people brush that off. And so the best way that I've learned to describe it so that we can create so that an invisible disability can be seen as visible is what coal miners used to do back in the day. Canary in a coal mine. They would send canaries into mines to test the air for toxicity. And if the canaries died or became impaired, the miners never went into the mine. They knew that it was unsafe for them to go into the mine and breathe that air. We are canaries in coal mines. Somebody like me can walk into a room and tell within seconds if this room is toxic for human health. I try to explain to people that if it's toxic for my health, it's also toxic for your health. You don't have to have multiple chemical sensitivity for it to be toxic to human health. So, these are the problems. It starts with the name. I really wish we can advocate for a better name. It's always had terrible names. It started out with, I think it was called environmental illness before, um, and then sick building syndrome, idiopathic environmental illness. What does that even mean? And now multiple chemical sensitivity. None of the names have ever done this condition any favors.
Hmm. And I imagine that's where all this stigma comes from, and the bullying. And unfortunately, there is a stigma around MCS that could lead to bullying or exclusion. And,
Yes.
you know, have you faced any bullying or discrimination due to your condition? And how did that impact
Yes.
you personally? I know you mentioned it, CTV, but if you could elaborate a little more on that for our
Yeah,
listeners.
at CTV, I definitely faced exclusion and bullying when people didn't want to work with me or they were whispering behind my back. When I was in the makeup room, I was an anchor. And, there's this unwritten rule that when you are in the makeup chair in the makeup room, that's your time with the makeup artist. That's your time to prepare yourself, not just the makeup, but for the upcoming newscast. And nobody enters the room at that time. There was another television personality who came into the room while I was in there and deliberately sprayed perfume in my vicinity and then said to me, "If you tell anybody it was me, I'm going to know it was you." And then she used a word that I won't use. And I mean, that was ultimate bullying. And my makeup artist was horrified, as was I. And my makeup artist said to me, she said, "If you want to take this to human resources, I will be your witness. I will be there with you. I will support you." And I said, "I am not a fool." I said, "I am the one that will be fired because that person is considered the golden girl, and I am not." And so I said, "Let's face it, I'm going to be the one that's fired." And so I never brought it forward. Um, Fast forward a number of years, and one of the major situations of discrimination that I faced was at the hands of Canada Border Service agencies and public health nurses who basically said that they had never heard of multiple chemical sensitivity. I was asking for an accommodation, and it wasn't a real stretch what I was asking for. And they claimed they'd never heard of this disability. These are nurses who work at a health authority in British Columbia that has a policy of being fragrance and chemical free. It's posted on the walls of the hallways. These are nurses who
Mm.
claimed, while discriminating against me and denying me accommodation, that they had never heard of this condition. I had a CBSA guard accuse me of falsifying medical records, forging a doctor's note that said that I have a disability called multiple chemical sensitivity. I mean, again, these are agencies that are there to protect us, and they discriminated against me. And so I have filed a human rights claim against them at the Human Rights Commission, and I'm just waiting for that to be advanced to the next stage. But that was, I mean, the treatment of me was egregious. And if somebody like me was treated like that, somebody who could articulate what the condition is, somebody who brought medical evidence of the condition, somebody who wasn't asking for anything that was out of this world in terms of accommodation, I can't imagine what other people go through. I mean, it sickens me. It breaks
Mm.
my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people are alone and don't even know where to begin. And it's I think it's commendable that you've turned your personal challenges into advocacy, especially with your work in human rights and communicating the realities of MCS, of this disability.
My
Um,
turning my multiple chemical sensitivity, which is a disability, my turning it into advocacy was because of your organization a few months ago. I've been aligned with your organization for about a year. And when I understood that there was a conference coming up and you guys requested that I speak, I had to sit with it. I'm not
mm,
somebody who is comfortable being a victim because I'm not a victim. I'm not comfortable talking about my personal struggles because those are my business, and I don't make them anybody else's business unless I need somebody to accommodate me. And I don't really talk about it publicly. I never have. So the first time I spoke about it publicly was only a couple of months ago at the conference hosted by your organization.
yeah.
And this will be the second time that I'm speaking about it publicly. And I never wanted to be the poster child for this disability. But I also have now come to understand that if I don't use my voice, there are people who don't have a voice They absolutely have nobody. They don't have a voice and nobody will listen to them. So if I can raise awareness about the condition, then I am happy to become that voice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's truly remarkable. And could you tell us about the virtual human rights conference you spoke at for our organization and how those experiences with MCS have shaped your further advocacy work?
The first time I spoke publicly about multiple chemical sensitivity and having this disability was at a human rights conference 2 months ago. And I did not realize, I mean, I've spoken at hundreds of events through my lifetime as a public speaker. I mean, over 35 years, I can't even count the number of stages I've been on. I did not realize how difficult it was going to be for me to address this condition and speak about my personal experiences. My voice started to shake the moment I was introduced. And I know that several times I fought back tears when I was speaking about my personal experiences. But again, see, now my voice starts shaking again because I think what really pushed me to speak about this is when I learned that people with my condition are seeking medical assistance in dying,
Mm,
the MAID program,
yeah,
euthanasia, because they can't find appropriate housing, because they can't find safe housing and safe employment. So they're choosing to die. And that is why I chose to become an advocate. And it is difficult for me to talk about that part of it. And I mean, it's always going to be difficult to speak about it, um, depending on where and when and who the audience is. It's always going to be challenging, but I want to give it a voice. I want to remove the stigma. I want to make this invisible disability visible in how we communicate about it.
yeah. Well, I know our audience really appreciates what you're doing for them. And as you mentioned, a lot of them don't have a voice, and having people like you come out and shed light on it has really helped the awareness grow. And we see it every month. Our awareness grows more and more and more. And I think people are starting to catch on because it's the numbers are staggering, right? We're at over 1 million Canadians that are diagnosed, and there's the ones we don't know or don't know themselves. And we go on forums sometimes, and we do see that people are wondering what they have, and they don't even know that this is that it's MCS.
The thing that drives me crazy though about the public, even my own circle, my own network, is, oh, but I'm only wearing a little bit of perfume.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm just wearing a little bit. Like it shouldn't bother you. I'm
Yeah,
just wearing a little bit. And I'm like, okay, first of all, low exposure is enough to create symptoms. Second of all, you, the wearer of this perfume, have become nose blind to it.
yeah,
And so it's really unfair for you to tell me how I feel. Rather, you should be more aware of the air we share and not impose it on me.
yeah, yeah. It's true. It's a long road ahead, but I think you know slowly but surely we'll get there. I've noticed that more and more health facilities are starting to require scent free. Like the
It's true. More,
hospitals and clinics.
you're absolutely right. Hospitals, doctors' offices, even places of employment. But
Yeah.
again, I go back to my experience with public health nurses working in British Columbia
Mm-hmm.
at a health authority in hospitals in British Columbia under a policy of scent free, claiming they've never heard of it.
Yeah. That's
It's deliberate ignorance.
yeah.
People don't want to change their habits.
Yeah. Intellectual laziness, I like to call it, which is very very close. It's the
Yes.
same idea. And I know I have a question here about the workplace, and like people face challenges in the workplace, but they also face challenges in public spaces with their families. Um, there's an endless plethora of places that people face challenges that have MCS, so they isolate themselves more and more. And like from your experience, what do you think needs to change, like in workplaces or even let's say public spaces or at home? Like what could people do to help
I
support
think
people?
the conversation around multiple chemical sensitivity needs to change. Start with a name change, make it visible, canary in a coal mine. If I come into a room, I will tell you immediately if the air is toxic. And we need to start discussing multiple chemical sensitivity as a climate issue. This is about indoor climates. And it doesn't just impact indoor air quality, it impacts the greater environment. For example, all of the chemicals in personal care and cleaning products end up in our oceans. Okay? Your laundry detergent, washing this stuff off your body, it all ends up in the waterways. So that pollutes our oceans. Landfills, all the containers that these products are coming in are ending up at the landfill. The outside air, NASA is studying emissions in space that are coming from, of all things, hairspray. And they have found hairspray emissions in space. So we need to change how we communicate about this disease. The name and the story that makes it visible, and shifting the narrative to be about the climate. And I think that will make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Which brings me to my next question, which I think you mentioned even at the conference, where stories need to be told, awareness needs to be told, And as a former journalist and now a crisis communication expert, you've had a unique perspective on how the media covers health issues. What role do you think the media plays in raising awareness about conditions like MCS, and how could it do it? How can it do it better?
With the media, if we flip the script and talk about this being a climate issue, I believe that they will start to pay attention because climate change, climate pollution is one of the number one pressing issues of our generation. The problem is that scientists haven't attached indoor air quality with outdoor air quality, even though indoor air quality is exponentially worse and more unsafe than outdoor air quality because of the things we do to ourselves with
Mm-hmm.
personal care products and cleaning products and our built environments, paint, glues, carpets, fire retardants in furniture. And so I think if it becomes a climate issue, the media will slowly start to pay more attention to that. And, the message matters. And that's my whole thing. The message matters. And we have to make it matter. And how we do that is talking about it being a climate issue.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that a lot of the media is focused on climate, and it's more like macro climate and the whole world. But I guess MCS would be to make it maybe a bit more microclimate, like what's going on at home, you know?
The impact of MCS, or sorry, let me rephrase that. Let me start that again. The impact of chemicals we use at home, whether they're our personal care products or our cleaning products, is far more immediate and long-term on human health than what's happening outside. What we do in our homes is more immediate in terms of the impact on waterways. It's more immediate in terms of the impact on air. It's more immediate in terms of the impact on human health. Like you said, we talk macro climate change. The climate is changing. It's bad for the planet. But the more immediate bad for the planet is something we are doing every day
Mm-hmm.
without thinking, you know, without thinking. And so, again, it's just changing that script and starting to make people care more. I think the NASA study is a huge start towards that conversation for NASA to find hairspray emissions in space is remarkable. I mean, I can't even fathom that. And I think starting to include that in the conversation with these credible organizations like NASA is going to start to change the script on this condition, on this disability.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this definitely covers even my next question, which is about highlighting how chemicals in everyday products affect pollution and human health and also the environment and even like, you know, black plastic, right? Like this is center stage right now. We have so much black plastic in our lives, and I mean, there's literally gasoline, there's fuel in each one of these products, and people are cooking with them, people are storing their food in them, combing their hair with it. I mean, the list is endless, you know?
Yes. It surprises me people who believe that they are healthy, and especially in British Columbia, we purport to be a very healthy province. We have the great outdoors, etc. We have Lululemon founded here, and so a lot of people are on a health kick, but they don't see what they're bringing into their homes, the things that are leaching into their food. They don't really consider that. People look to convenience more than they do to health.
Yeah,
And, who wins but these big companies, these manufacturers and these companies that are peddling these products that are designed to make our lives easier. And everybody's always looking for the hack. How can I make this easy for me? And it's killing us. It's killing humans. It's killing animals. It's killing the planet.
yeah, yeah. I couldn't have said it better. Yeah, it's. I mean, you know, even 15 years ago, you know, I've mentioned this in other episodes as well. Like peanut allergies, right? Um, Now it's very well regulated. Kids can bring peanuts to school. But when I was in school 15, 20 years ago, in elementary school, no one was told not to bring peanut butter to school. And if someone would tell parents, you know, peanuts aren't allowed anymore, they would think everybody was off the rocker, you know? So, and these allergies and these sensitivities are directly related to the environment and where these ingredients come from and how that's changed. I mean, I know it's a whole can of worms to go down that path, but you know, so many studies have been done lately that our immune systems are reacting to things because for the last 8, 9, 10 centuries our bodies were never exposed to these things, so we're not used to these chemicals, you know.
But we're not meant to be. We're not
Yeah,
meant to be exposed to chemicals.
yeah.
The problem is, there's more and more people experiencing allergies or conditions like multiple chemical sensitivity, which is not a true allergy because it's not a histamine
Mm,
response, but debilitating nonetheless. The problem is that more and more people are experiencing these issues because there are so many more chemicals in our food and in the products we use and in our built environments. And we are not equipped, our human body is not equipped to manage all these chemicals. And so we're overflowing with chemicals. And what happens? What happens when you pour water into a cup and it gets full, but you don't stop pouring? It overflows. And that is what's happening to the world right now. I know so many people now who have become sensitive to chemicals, not to the extent perhaps that some of us are, but they'll say, there's certain perfumes now that give me a headache, or I can no longer walk into Sephora. I get a headache, or, there's a certain air freshener that really bothers me, but it never used to bother me. That's because your system is chemically overloaded
yeah.
and the cup is full. It's overflowing. It has nowhere to go. And that's why we are in this epidemic now. It's an
Well,
emergency. It's a crisis. It's a human health crisis. It's an environmental crisis. We need to flip the script on it so people listen and change their behavior.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, certain products could make you react like from half a block away for how strong they are. And like you could tell that a lot of people are starting to pick up on it. Like it used to be like just very few, but like there's some cleaning products out there that are horrendous. They're so strong, and if it's making your eyes water from half a room away, then if it's doing that to one person, it must be doing something else, even if you're not reacting to it.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And I've said this so often to people, just because you're not reacting to it doesn't mean other people aren't. It is so unfair to suggest that because you're not reacting, it should be fine.
yeah,
This is like a daily challenge. I mean, I've been very lucky. Once I found my voice, I was able to speak with my friends and family about this condition. And some of my family members, my sisters, do have some sensitivities as well. And so we as a family are fragrance and chemical free. My friends that I see, um, they know not to be fragranced around me. They understand the condition, and so they're very respectful. My clients are extremely respectful. If I'm going into the office, they know to be fragrance free, and a lot of offices now are fragrance free, and so they know to be fragrance free, or and rather they we can sit in a room where a window can be opened. So I'm fortunate that I have around me people who absolutely respect and understand the condition and will accommodate and go out of their way, like really to accommodate, make sure that I feel okay. And then those that don't, well, guess what? They're not in my circle anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's those are the challenges, right? Like so, but you're right. It's like I've had friends that ask me and know the work that I'm doing, and and they maybe like a year ago was like, oh, okay, like what is, and then they're like, every couple of weeks it's like, hey, I noticed I went to this place or that place, and they're starting to say, hey, no fragrances, or oh, hey, they just passed this new policy where I work, and they sent an email to everybody starting on Monday, you're not allowed to wear fragrances at work anymore. And it's slowly, and not to drop names, but some of the major banks in Canada are starting to adopt the policy. Even our major airlines are starting to look into it for their
Oh, speaking of
employees and
airlines,
for travel.
speaking of airlines, I travel quite a bit. I have to say, I've been wearing double masks on flights since 2011 because I find airplane air to be toxic. Not only are we exposed to jet fuel, which is super strong and nauseating, we're exposed to the cleaning products that became a lot worse through COVID, a lot of bleaches. We're exposed to air fresheners that are running through airplane bathrooms nonstop. And then, of course, we're exposed to the passengers. Their detergents, their deodorants, their lotions, their soaps, their perfumes and colognes, their hairsprays, other hair products. I mean, it's endless. So if airlines were to make the move to cut any fragrance they use, and frankly, flight attendants are heavily scented, can be heavily scented. So if they move towards a fragrance-free policy for staff, and then a fragrance-free, chemical-free policy for cleaning. That would go a long way towards eliminating some of the toxicity in the air. Anytime you exit an aircraft, just smell your hair and smell your clothes. It's all on you because these products emit phthalates that float in the air and land on you. Literally, things are in the air flying, invisible things that are landing on you. That's why you smell like the environment you were just in. Any airline that goes in that direction will win a passenger for life in me.
Perfect. And despite the many challenges you've faced with MCS, you continue to advocate for change and raise your voice. What keeps you motivated and hopeful in this fight for better recognition and accommodation for people with MCS?
I'm motivated to continue advocating for multiple chemical sensitivity and making people recognize it's a disability because we are seeing a push at workplaces and in government to go fragrance free. And so the education is starting and it's starting to take hold. And um, unfortunately, as people who are not suffering from the condition, but do suffer symptoms from certain chemicals. Unfortunately, as that population grows, the conversation will grow, and we will start moving towards a safer, scent-free, chemical-free world for everybody. And people will start to understand that no sense makes sense and that they need to be more aware of the air that we share. And these are the types of catchphrases, if you will, that will start to stay in people's minds. And that will start allowing that conversation to be remembered and to move the needle forward.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. So, Renu, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. This conversation has been really valuable for our community, our listeners. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
I want to thank your organization for leading in this fight, and it still is a fight. I also want to address other people with this condition. I want you to know that you're not alone. There are people working to advocate for your safety. I am starting to use my voice, and I hope that I can advocate for your safety. Part of the reason that I pursued a human rights case is for this very reason. I wanted to raise awareness about what happened and at the hands of public health workers. I think that once the Human Rights Commission advances my complaint, it's going to be a good platform for me to start to raise more awareness. And because these are national agencies, government agencies, I believe there will be attention paid to this complaint. And that will start a conversation, an important conversation. I want to discourage anybody who is thinking about this is this is really hard for me, but anybody who's thinking about dying because you can't find safe housing. I want you not to think about that. I want you not to go down that road. You have to find an advocate in this organization. Um, and you can't contemplate that because the world needs you. It is not your time. I mean, that's not the reason to go, is my point, because there are accommodations available. And there will be more and more accommodations available as time goes on. So just don't make that decision. That, again, that's why I decided to start speaking about this publicly. Um, it's just difficult knowing that people choose that path and they don't have to. So, anyway, that's all I have to say. Just hang in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Renu, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your advocacy work, and your insights with us today. You've certainly opened our eyes to the realities of MCS and the urgent need for better understanding, for support and action. Uh, we wish you all the best in your ongoing efforts to raise awareness and make a real impact, and being on our journey as well. To our listeners, we hope you've gained this incredible, valuable perspective from today's conversation. Uh, and be sure to check out the resources Renu mentioned and check us out, and let's continue working together to create a world where everyone is understood and supported. On my behalf, I'll thank you all for tuning in to Footprints and Impacts. Until next time, stay informed and take care. Is there anything else you want to add, Renu?
That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Footprints and Impacts. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with friends, family, and especially someone who might benefit. Don't forget to follow our upcoming episodes for more insights on sustainability, health, inclusion, and how we can all make a positive environmental impact. Until next time, stay curious, take care of yourself, and be well.
This podcast is part of the Empowering Community and Removal of Barriers project, funded in part by the Government of Canada's Social Development Partnerships Program, Disability Component.